Good afternoon and welcome to the final session of what has been a fantastic Melbourne EdTech Summit. I'm David Linke, the Managing Director of EdTech Growth. We are Australia's education, technology and innovation industry hub. Through connection and collaboration, we accelerate Australia's EdTech ecosystem globally. This afternoon, we have an amazing set of speakers. Sally Browner and Jonathan Tanner talking about support for students to upskill throughout their lives. Mark Washbourne and Gil Cushion talking about capital amplifying education innovation with Maria Spies. And we wrap the summit up with the pitch final featuring 4 companies that made it through the heats throughout the last 4 days. I'd like to begin this afternoon's program by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land. In the spirit of reconciliation, EdTech Growth acknowledges the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and their connections to land, sea and community. Today I join you from the traditional land of the Boorong, Woiwurrung people of the Kulin Nations. I extend all our respects to their elders past, present and emerging, and extend all of our respects to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people joining us today. Let's get our first session underway this afternoon, and we've got a great session being moderated by Alex Tran. Alex is one of the co-founders of Bloom Away, a Sydney-based startup building a career coach powered by artificial intelligence. This is his second business. His first generating over $2 million per annum when he started was 18, and now at the grand old age of 25. His mission is helping university students find their way in their career. Lumoi has licensed the software to leading Australian universities and is voted #1 in the future work category by EdTech Growth. Alex, welcome.
David, how are you doing?
Thank you so much. Doing really well. We were noticing that your internet was a little bit patchy there. Maybe everyone Friday afternoon is logging on for their virtual drinks. So we'll see how we go. Over to you, Alex.
Thank you, because I was panicking about 2 seconds ago. So thanks, David, and thank you, EdTech Growth. It's my pleasure today to welcome the 2 speakers for today's session. So we have Jonathan Tanner and Sally Browner. Jonathan is the co-founder and CEO of Social Media College, Australia's leading educator and trainer for social media. Jonathan, he co-authored the Diploma of Social Media Marketing, and it's the world's first and only Australian government recognised course in social media marketing. And it's delivered by 25 leading colleges and TAFEs across Australia and articulating to 7 bachelor programs at Australian unis. His deep expertise in social media spans across content marketing, social media strategy, 15 different social media networks, paid social, personal branding, email, you name it. So really, really lucky to have him here today. And then finally, we have Sally Browner. So Sally is a passionate teacher. There's Jonathan. Sally is a passionate teacher with a very diverse CV. She's worked in banking, advertising, high school, and now in technology education. In particular, she's interested in looking for ways of innovating, of linking industry and education, and getting students ready for the work market by equipping them with relevant skills and helping teachers become more confident with technology. So there she is. Give us a wave, Sally. Awesome. Okay, so thank you everyone for joining for today. We have a few questions which we'll go through, and please know that we have the chat function so you can put any questions and we can pick them out. So kind of just keep this conversation rolling really smoothly. So how about we start with Sally here. So Sally, do you want to tell us a little bit about Goanna and what you guys do over there?
Sure, I'd love to. Thank you for having me, Alex. It's really exciting to be here on a Friday afternoon in lockdown in Sydney. So I can't imagine anything I'd rather, well, actually, no, there are things I'd rather be doing, but I can't go out. So it's great to be here. So Goanna Education, we are an Indigenous-owned organisation, and our mission is about driving diversity in the technology sector using innovative education. So we are relatively new. We've been around for the last 12 months, and we are really passionate about innovating in this really exciting space and reskilling and upskilling of diverse members of our society in order to see those pipelines of talent coming into the sector and really shaking it up a little bit.
That's good. Thank you for that. And Jonathan, you want to tell us a little bit about Social Media College?
Yeah, great. Thanks, Alex. Great to be here with you, Sally. Also joining you in lockdown in Sydney. Look, Social Media College, we've got a variety of different, both accredited and non-accredited programs and courses that we run. Really, it's just about empowering people to leverage and harness the power of social media. We believe it is a massive, massive change enabler, and our role is to put in place that multiplier effect where we give people the structure and the confidence to use social media to grow their organization or to have more social impact, whatever it is that they're trying to achieve. Our goal is to help them do that. So that's us.
Great. Cool. So, obviously over the past, how many, you've both been in industry for quite some time now.
Probably longer than you've been alive.
I was thinking the same.
Actually,
thing.
Jonathan, you look very young, so maybe that's not true. Maybe
yeah. I just had my second Pfizer jab, so I was just gonna caveat by saying it hasn't impacted me yet. But if I start drooling and talking in tongues, then you know why.
Well, I just had my first today, so you're just once again just a couple years ahead, right? So with the many students that you're seeing come through the different programs that you've both been a part of, what would you say in terms of like skills you're seeing like this rising demand for?
Well, I'll kick off because I know Jonathan's got a lot to say probably around the skills in the social media space, but I think there's a big focus on digital literacy and what that means and how we measure that and what sort of training is going to help develop that. If you're talking about more technical or the higher level technical skills, we're seeing a lot of interest in DevOps, in cloud, there's still a very strong interest in programming, web development, mobile app development, but I guess things like data analytics, data engineering, but probably the biggest growth area we're seeing on cyber, of course, but probably cloud is one of the strongest areas of growth.
Interesting. Like, is there in terms of like catering to some of these needs, Jonathan, is this something that you've seen many companies say like take advantage of as well?
Yeah, I mean, obviously I'm going to be slightly biased and talk about social media. Obviously it's a growing and just exploding market and really just shows no sign of slowing down. But like if I think more broadly about skills, I think there's just been this huge rush and a huge amount of investment capital that's gone into creating some pretty incredible online tools that people can use, whether that's about growing your revenue or being more efficient at what you're doing. And now I think there's this kind of growing need for people to actually be able to implement these tech stacks. And I think, get the most out of them, because I think, a lot of people kind of feared automation, but the reality is that implementing a lot of these softwares and actually integrating them into your day-to-day operations is quite challenging. And that, if you just look at a digital marketer or a social media marketer, they're probably using 25 to 30 different pieces of software, all of which need to be integrated together. And the expectations from above are very, very high about what they can achieve. So I think, I always think about a social media marketer and I think of that picture of that person kind of juggling about 20 balls in the air at once. So I think for me, that's what we're seeing is that, people need to know how to do a lot and be really, really efficient with it.
I think that's so true. I would say though the use of different tools, so and that automation space, whether it's in social media or whether it's across the board in other areas, is so key. And learning those different technological tools, which kind of goes back to that, what is digital literacy or digital fluency, and how does that equate? Is there's the building of the technology, but then there's just actually the using of all of those different technology platforms, or then the other tools that you potentially are using to integrate all of those different technology platforms. So there's a lot of complexity, and I, similarly to what Jonathan was saying, providers like Salesforce or even ServiceNow, there's a growing demand as those products become ever more present in the marketplace. As same with, say, AWS, that they're the skill sets, the particular areas that you're seeing a lot of growth in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no doubt. And so, it really comes down to that, what I'm hearing, that key thematic of being able to interact and integrate these tools and technologies into the workplace really just becomes the transition of the worker. So that's really good. I'm interested, like I know Jonathan, through Social Media College, you've put something like 10,000, was it, like graduates through your program?
Yeah, I mean across both ones we've delivered direct and through all of our partners. Yeah, it's around that number. Yeah.
That's massive congratulations, obviously. So that's awesome. With these cohorts that you've been supporting, there are a lot of kind of questions we can dig into. I think one key one is like, how do you even just start off like reaching them? Like, how are they, finding you and getting in touch?
Yeah, I mean, look, again, I'm going to shoot this from a biased point of view, but you're just seeing a massive amount of investment from organisations, small, medium, large, into digital customer acquisition, and the lion's share of that's going to Google and Facebook. But you are starting to see, platforms like TikTok and a few upstarts gaining traction very, very quickly. If you look at TikTok, it's taken Instagram 10 years to get over 1 billion users. It's taken TikTok, really from when it kind of started to take off, only about 2. So you're seeing other platforms emerge around that. But I think more and more also people are realizing, from a marketing perspective, that the importance of things like, building their own email list and being able to communicate in that sort of one-on-one space, and also thinking about other bits of software that they can potentially do. When I think about connection, and this is something we teach extensively, we always think about development of personas, and think about really going to super granular detail on who your customers are, who your prospects are, and what are their pain points, and what are their frustrations, and where are they trying to get to, and what's their future state that they're looking for. Because ultimately, there's so much noise out there now. The content is just prolific, and the challenge now for organizations in finding and attracting customers into their organization is how do you develop that cut through? How do you actually connect with people? A lot of it is through copy, writing really good language that is persuasive and that connects with people, and that people identify with, and that usually comes from the development of really, really strong personas.
Yeah.
You apply the same, sorry, I'm interrupting.
Yeah, go for it.
Apply the same rigor to your own social media campaigns to attract students that you do. Do you use your own campaigns as case studies? So
yeah, no, absolutely. And a lot of it, it's funny, like a lot of, we've always had a policy that the better we are at it, the better we are as educators. And so we have to, we're constantly talking about practicing what we preach, and the lessons that we learn as marketers ultimately make us a better educator. And we've intentionally stayed very, very vertical, on the social media space, and the virtual majority of our social ads, and it's paid off. I think ultimately it's made us better educators as a result. So yes, that's the answer.
That's really good. This idea of like ideal customer profiles and such, Sally, is that something which resonates with how you run Goanna, or some of the work you've done previously?
Our mission is around diversity. So we're looking to attract different types of students depending on what programs we're running. So we have programs running at the moment that are Indigenous cohorts in data analytics. We have programs running that are mature cohorts in cloud, and we have different ways of reaching and attracting, and different reasons for seeking those different groups, right? So, and they certainly there are certain cohorts that are very easy to attract. I know, some of our programs, we had a program that we ran with the Digital Skills Organisation that was a data analytics program for mature cohort. They were we put out just some, a small social media campaign, and we were massively oversubscribed. And then when you're working in the Indigenous space, look, it's very much about trust, and it's very much about community, and you need to it's about building relationships, and going and having those really important conversations, with community in order to build up rapport and get that trust and reach the students that may want to engage in your course. So hopefully that kind of answered your question. So it really depends. And look, we're working on another program with the Victorian government, and we've been working with Hudson, and that's been really interesting because that's quite sort of a little bit different in Australia. The Victorian government is doing something quite innovative with this digital skills program that they're running. Hudson actually goes and does all of the recruitment and does a huge amount of the pre-testing of candidates. And then those candidates then get to select which course they want to. And we're just one of a range of providers that are providing courses. And the caliber of the candidates coming through is quite phenomenal, and they've been through all this testing, but they're also filtered for diversity and, regional and, the fact that they've been unemployed or whatever else. So we're actually helping the people that most need it, but we're also getting amazing candidates that are really engaged, motivated, have a growth mindset, all of those fantastic attributes. So that's, I guess, an interesting model as well.
No, that's great. Like this idea of kind of building that trust and reaching out to communities or groups who otherwise, are sometimes challenging to get out and, to connect with. I think that's, very good, a very moral thing that you're doing there. So I think that's awesome. Jonathan, have you seen that? On that note, is that something which, we got some questions. I've got they can do that. So let me just quickly pick and choose from one of these. So we've been hearing about how some universities, this is a good one, are not teaching these software specific skills, right? More learn to learn. I'm not sure what that means, but much more to learn apparently. So I think, Jonathan, you have we've spoken about this prior to the call, like you have a really strong perspective on this, which I think is worth hearing about.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people use this framework, and I think it's great. You talk about there are certain courses which signal to prospective employers that you have a skill set, and that's typically, your formal qualifications. And then there's a huge group of people who are just really about skills. It's about how do I upskill as quickly as possible. And Sally and I have talked about how a lot of the demand, that certainly in our experience is coming from people that are re-entering the workforce. We have a predominantly female, cohort of students coming through. They've typically had a couple of kids and they're re-entering the workforce. And I think the concept of going back and doing a formal qualification is probably the last thing in their mind. What they're looking to do, given everything that they're juggling in their lives, adult learning is challenging. All of a sudden you're working, you've got other commitments, and you want to kind of smash it out as quickly as possible. And that's what they're looking for. They're looking for rapid upskilling. They're looking for, give me everything that I need and make sure it's as practical as humanly possible so that I can get to.
Oh.
Uh-oh. Is that me? Is that me that's gone?
No, I think it might be Jonathan, actually.
Oh, okay.
I'm hoping it's Jonathan and not me. But if
well, I can
pick up on his point, actually, because I think look, in my current role, we also believe very strongly in that intensive education boot camp model. And where I worked previously, we also sorry, Jonathan, I was just filling in for you while you keep going.
No, keep going. Finish it off for me. I think we're pretty aligned. In our views.
I was just reinforcing your point of view. And I think the thing is, university plays a really important role. And I think I don't think anybody should ever suggest that university should go. I think what I am seeing in the market is, or what I'm surprised to see in the marketplace is, there has always been a big amount of credibility that is put on, be it university or TAFE qualifications, and a little bit of fear around micro-credentials. And what I'm sort of seeing is a lot of merging of those things, where you're seeing universities and TAFE step into that micro-credential space. And I'm also seeing people a lot more accepting, and employers a lot more accepting of alternate micro-credentials than they were previously, and more interested in, can this person that's going for a job complete a coding challenge versus do they have a computer science degree? So I'm definitely seeing that. And I think there is a little bit of a risk in the university and the vet system, to be honest, of how long it takes to get a program up and running that is linked to industry outcomes. There are some universities that are doing it better than others, but the pace of change that's happening in the market is not being reflected in the pace of change within universities, and that part of and TAFEs, and that part of that is the way that they're structured. But that means there's a big opportunity for providers like myself, Jonathan, and lots of the others out there that are trying to make it as industry relevant, as practical, as up to the minute as possible.
Yeah, and I'm not sure where I got cut off there, but no, I agree. Like there's always going to be room. I mean, our main product is a diploma, which is a formal qualification, and I think the reason why it's been as successful as it's been so widely adopted by so many different colleges is what we've tried to do is kind of take that kind of non-award short course mentality and apply it to the diploma, which is just to make it insanely practical and teach them that the kind of things that they're going to be doing and make sure that they're developing a digital portfolio as they're working their way through the qualification, and so that they reach the end of it and they have the proof to show a prospective employer about exactly the skills that they need. But at the same time, we've got an intensive program, which is just kind of compressing a lot of that into about 2 months, because there's different people have different demands, or at different life stages, and I think you need to be able to cater to those different groups.
University is also a mass market model at the end of the day, and I know what we do is a lot more we really look after end to end, a lot of love for students, a lot of support for students. It's very it's more like a constant tutorial with continuous feedback in order to teach people what they need to learn in a very short space of time, but very intensively. And it's very much about community building and also building rapport between the various participants in the group. So it's a very different embedded integrated learning model. But it's also challenging to scale in the way that universities like to scale. So, or other education programs like to scale. So it gets good results, but it is, there's costs and benefits.
For sure, this whole this intensive hands-on, types of programs that both of you have run, that clearly providing some just-in-time skills. I think what I'm interested in is actually the second question, which has come up. I think it flows quite nicely into that. So they've asked, how important is it to ensure your students have job-specific skills, right? So, in lieu of the fact that we are having now these kinds of, boot camps or what have you, does that kind of almost lower that barrier for students to have to come in with, the specific skills, or candidates to come in with the specific skills already established, or is that not the case?
Do you want to do that one first, Jonathan, or would you like me?
Yes, go ahead. Sally, you go ahead.
Oh, no. No, after you. I would just say yes. I think very definitely the job-specific skills are really important. And what we're working on a program at the moment. It's in one of our Indigenous cohorts. We're actually working with Accenture, and we're actually integrating all of the programs that graduates would do once they arrived in Accenture within the program. And that is both technology-wise, so things like their specific agile training, their specific technology quotient training, because all of those graduates are going to be going into Accenture. So we're actually fast-tracking them and making the idea being that you minimise the difference between the training environment and the work environment as much as possible. So, and that's kind of your ideal scenario. As much as you can get that job-specific skill, that's gold. And, it depends on how engaged industry want to be, particularly if they're hiring at the end of it. And I'm seeing a lot more happen in that sense, where it's not just about running cohort after cohort and hoping that you find them a job at the end, or hoping that you can help support them into a job. It's about working with the industry beforehand and all the way through to align those job-specific skills, so that they sit there at the end and go, oh, fantastic. They've got, they've done the Azure Fundamental certification as we requested. Brilliant. I know what I'm getting with that candidate. So just as an example.
Yeah, I think the answer is definitely. I mean, and that's kind of we teach kind of the strategic frameworks that you need in order to kind of make it work. But ultimately, our goal is to teach the tactics and the hard skills that you need to make it happen. And sometimes if you've got let's say you've got a business owner, we often say, look, we get that you are probably not the person that's going to be doing the work once you know how to do this yourself, but unless you know how to do it yourself, you're going to find it very, very hard to manage someone else to do it. I get a lot of business owners come to us and they say, I've been ripped off by 4 or 5 agencies. And we're like, okay, well, tell us, what do you know about, X, Y, Z, how to run a Facebook ad? And they're like, nothing. That's why I hired the agency. And I said, well, kind of, there's your problem. The issue is that you're not able to hold them accountable. You have no idea what they're doing, and you aren't able to challenge their sort of work. So I think ultimately, the focus for us is about those hard skills. And certainly from a social media marketing perspective, you're going to need like every single kind of tactic and efficiency hack that you can possibly imagine, because there's just so much to do, and there's so much to kind of work through, that if you don't have that, if all we do is just kind of teach the theory of it, I think then you get to a point where people kind of get into the implementation phase, whether that's in their own business or working for someone else, and they have to go and learn that stuff again. So that, in our opinion, we wouldn't have empowered them effectively if that's what we did. So I think, that those hard skills is what it's all about.
I'm super interested then in building upon this idea of you teach for instance, Jonathan, you teach a course which is has to be updated constantly, right? Because like new tools, new technologies are coming out like every week, right? Every day. So in terms of the actual then teaching, I couldn't find a better word for it, the education aspect and delivery of it to the actual students, has anything perhaps changed, especially in the midst of like the pandemic and everything, in terms of how you deliver?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think you'd find an education provider that would tell you that things haven't dramatically changed over the last 12 months. We were fortunate. I mean, we were delivering a lot of our stuff virtually live over Zoom before the pandemic hit. And so we felt like everyone was just catching up to where we were. But we'd only started that process maybe, 9 months earlier. But of course, it's just been this massive, COVID has been this thing that's kind of disrupted everyone's kind of learning models. But, we're really, if I look, internally at our organization, we're really focused on the whole. I have this great analogy. It's like, don't just think about your course as just the meal that you're serving people. It's the whole dining experience. And we've done everything we can to just really kind of focus on empathizing with the students and what they're going throughout COVID, and just doing everything we can to support them, because the reality is, a lot of people out there are struggling and dealing with a once in a lifetime. And of course, you need to adjust your approach. And coming to your question about, social media and how dynamic it is, part of that training that we do is getting people to understand that they have to be lifelong learners, that we're going to teach you what's relevant now, but maybe in 6 months, maybe in 3 months, it's not, maybe that's not going to be relevant unless you know how to be a lifelong learner and be adaptive and go and find this information yourself. Then, you're not going to maintain your skill set.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
All right, so let's move on to, behind the scenes, Jonathan, you shared like this story, which was kind of talking towards the whole idea of the concept of like this merging that we're seeing between education and recruitment. And so you had a case study which you mentioned before with one company, like Outcome Life. Did you want to speak to that a bit? Because I thought that was like really interesting.
Yeah, I mean, they're a great example. They're an internship placement company, and they're working with a lot of our diploma partners on, taking people and placing them into internships as the bridge between study and work. And, as I said to you, I think it just makes sense. And I think we will continue to see a bit of a merging between, education and recruitment, because it I think Sally, I think Sally and I are pretty aligned on this. It just makes sense. It just makes sense that the people that are doing the educating are also helping to put them into work.
Yeah, I would absolutely support that. I mean, you see a lot of the providers that work in the private space do a lot of career support. And I know, again, your traditional sector try to do that, but again, you end up with such large numbers of students, and it also isn't necessarily hasn't been their area of expertise, because it does involve a lot of, again, industry outreach and being very connected and working very hard to get those students employed. So I'm seeing a lot. Goanna Education has a recruitment side of the business, Goanna Solutions, and we're just seeing more and more opportunities to align both sides of the business. So, I would 100% agree with what Jonathan said there.
And how long has that been around, Sally? Just out of interest, like how long have you been doing that?
Solutions business has actually been around longer than education. So education, Solutions has been around for the last 4 years. And in the IT, labour hire and recruitment space. And again, we are just in the process of getting to the point where we are getting our graduates employed through Solutions as opposed to through education, through our education business. But that's a real work in progress, because there's so many opportunities. But what's interesting is if you look at some of the big private providers and the ownership structure, they actually usually own recruitment companies as well. But what happens, I think, sometimes is the left hand and the right hand don't necessarily speak. So I'm anticipating there is going to be a burgeoning of that space in the big end of town as well over the next 5 years. Yeah.
Yeah. It's very interesting. Do you have perspectives on like how it might actually work, at scale between some of these, traditional like large universities and institutions?
In terms of whether the university, going from universities, and that would be interesting. Actually, I hadn't even canvassed that idea of universities aligning themselves with a big recruitment company, which is kind of, again, is a logical choice. You've just got to find the appetite to do it. But yeah, again, it'd be the challenge is again around those junior roles in the market and how much work has to go in. And I think that what's been really interesting in the tech space is COVID has actually created a scenario where, with our borders closed and the massive demand for digital/tech talent of all varieties, has meant that industry is looking very hard at how do they develop those pipelines, even more than they were, 12 months ago. And they're looking at that junior talent pool in a new way because of its necessity. And then they have to look at how they start engaging more. So, I think there's part of the problem is there's not enough candidates coming out of university. So they've got to look beyond that. But certainly I know there's I think it will only be a matter of time before you see more alignment between big private recruitment companies and university. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think what you're starting to see, like the General Assemblies, the Academy XI, the big short course providers, these guys are actually just guaranteeing a job placement. Like that's part of the enrollment, that's part of the appeal and the marketing of it. And I think over time, more and more, there's almost going to be this expectation. It's like, yeah, okay, you're going to train me, but how are you going to help me get a job as well? Just that bundling of services together.
And the only issue that comes with that is that works for, and the intensive upskilling model, it works for a component of students to get them job ready in that time, but you don't want to deny that opportunity, the accessibility and the support. You also want to make sure we need to have mechanisms for looking after those candidates that also don't necessarily aren't job ready right at the end of that initial intensive program. And that's one of the things I think, needs thinking about as well. Yeah.
Yeah, and also it just doesn't apply to everyone. Certainly a big chunk of people that look to do our 9-week intensive short course, for them it's about their own business, or it's about starting a business or something like that, and they don't really care about a job placement. So it only impacts a certain cohort.
That one actually speaks a little bit. I like that idea of like modifying it for students who've already like gone through and perhaps aren't at the same like outcome as, you know, some of the other students. Is that something which, because you're working like a lot more hands-on, is that something which can kind of be managed throughout the process versus something which can't happen in the larger institutions?
Yeah, 100%. That's I think where you probably get the greatest value from organizations like ours, is just the amount of effort that goes into dealing with diverse, not just diverse cohorts on a bigger picture, but diversity within the cohort, and different levels of ability within the cohort, and the differentiation that we can do in the moment, because we're super motivated to do it. I mean, if you've got 25,000 students coming through your university, you're not quite as motivated to look after a percentage of them as we are, because it's, you know, a much bigger, you know, part of our revenue. So, and, you know, and part of our mission as well. So yeah, I think that's definitely a differentiating factor.
Great. Just remind me, I think this session finishes at 3:40, right? I don't know.
You tell us. You tell us.
Is it time to go into the Negroni yet?
I mean, I feel like Sally and I will just keep talking until you cut us off. But
yeah. So it is. So we got time for just like one last question. So let's see here. Maybe a nice little fun one. There's a quick question. Do you guys like any of them from the chat? So we got one which is asking about.
Somebody said learn on country, work on country, which is great because it's something we really believe in. So it's not really a question, but it is definitely something we're looking to do in the Indigenous space, is that working remotely and helping Indigenous candidates potentially learn remotely and then work remotely. So yeah, I don't know where.
I had to jump in, Alex. The primary job you've got as MC is to know what time you're supposed to finish. Make sure your internet's working and know when you finish. You've got some minutes. But I actually wanted to jump in.
Yeah, I really had
question.
2 jobs. I'm only used to having the one. So
okay,
when you give me more than one, I can't count that high.
You can't. You probably Instagram flash.
I'm still young. I'm still young. I've got years in front of me.
He's probably multitasking. He's probably got 6 different things going on at once.
We've got a few
minutes
minutes left. So why don't we do a question? I actually think it's really important. Let's link it back to our theme around amplifying innovation. So I'll begin with you, Sally. What is it that we are doing now that you think we need to do more of that will amplify this innovation for students?
Okay. Well, what I'm really excited about seeing at the moment is innovation in the junior space. So that pressure on industry to think about how they take on and onboard juniors. So the more you have that, the more opportunities there are for all graduates and all people entering the tech space. And the better that experience is, the less of a leaky pipeline you have. And innovating in that space. How do we innovate to get virtual onboarding in the middle of COVID up to a standard that it is identical or better than onboarding face-to-face? I mean, I don't know if that's possible, but if we really apply our minds to it, then that would be super exciting. I'm also loving seeing, actually, you know, one of the most exciting projects we're working on at the moment is this Vic government project, where you have such a strong engagement between government, industry and education, and also recruitment companies. And that intensive reskilling of mature age people from across Victoria it's a massive initiative. It's hard. It's being done in a very agile fashion. And it's going to be really interesting to see the results of that from a longitudinal point of view. But I think from an innovative collaboration point of view, that's really exciting. I'd love to be able to talk to delivery, like machine learning being used for adaptive learning.
That's for another session. We'll do that one in another session. Let me cut across. Jonathan, same question to you. What is it that we're doing now that you think we need to continue to do and amplify innovation in this education space?
Yeah, I think it comes down to for me the concept of personalization for the learner. I think there are, as I mentioned earlier, you know, this huge amount of tools now and software that can be adapted to create these amazing learning journeys for different students. But it's really now about the application of that technology, and how do we actually, you know, how do the individual education institutions take those different pieces of technology and build that stack, which ultimately delivers better outcomes for the students. And that I think is kind of the next frontier. You know, how do we make each individual student, how do we cater to their individual needs, and do that using technology? I think the technology is there. The next phase is how do we get it out there, and how do we actually ultimately, you know, improve the outcomes for the students?
Well, I hope you're both right. I hope you're both right that we can actually do both of those things. So Alex, Jonathan and Sally, thank you so very much for a really insightful conversation on this Friday afternoon. Thanks very much for being here, and we'll see you in our next event.
Pleasure.
Thank you for having us.
Our next session is a deep dive into how investment and capital can amplify education. And it's my pleasure to formally introduce Maria Spires, who will introduce the other speakers. Maria is co-founder and co-CEO of Holland IQ, the world's leading impact intelligence platform. Prior to Holland IQ, Maria was the head of digital learning futures for a $40 million corporate venture capital fund. She has worked in public and private higher education for more than 20 years in Asia and Australia, specializing in transforming education through technology. Hi, Maria, how are you?
David. Hello, David. It's good to see you.
How's it going? I'll hand you the stage and you can introduce Mark and Jill. And just so we, if you saw the end of the last thing, 420, all right? 420, there you go, Maria, just to help. I can't translate that off the top of my head to where you are, but you've got 40 minutes, okay?
Thanks, David, appreciate it. Okay. Hi, everyone, welcome. This is going to be a fun session. Are my co-speakers coming online in a second? So great. Hi, Jill and Mark, welcome. Great to see you.
Thanks, Maria.
So just to introduce the session first up for the audience, and welcome to the audience. So this session is around amplifying how capital can amplify education impact. So, you know, EdTech investment isn't new, but, you know, of course, the focus on it over the past 12 months, 18 months has been massive. And we'll talk about a little bit about that. You know, lots of learners, billions of learners going online because of COVID. So EdTech investment trends are huge at the moment. We're going to dig a little bit deeper into the different types of capital and how capital can amplify education impact. So I'm really honoured to be here with Jill Cashian and Mark Washburn. Jill is a director at PwC with a deep experience in partnering with education institutions, governments and for-purpose organisations to grow and drive more value through strategic planning, growth strategy development, transformation, effectiveness. So I'm really looking forward to what Jill has to say and all that experience working with those organisations. And of course, Mark is the CEO and co-founder of EdTech, one of Australia's success stories, EdTech success stories. And Mark's been overseeing EdTech's growth from early product development in 1999, last century, to a leading listed technology company. And so, you know, we have two super experienced professionals in the industry on the chat today. I'm going to just start with just a little bit of framing. The type of I guess expertise I can bring to the table is how EdTech is, what is happening in EdTech around the world, a little bit about where the capital's going and how Australia sort of compares to that. So, you know, you would probably already know from whatever part of the ecosystem you sit that EdTech is sort of on fire at the moment. Lots and lots of capital coming into education, which has been deployed elsewhere in the past. We're seeing in 2020, $16 billion of venture capital was put into EdTech, and that was a record. And the previous years before that was 7 billion and 8 billion and 6 billion and 4 billion and so on. So it really ramped up in 2020 with $16 billion. But the first half of 2021 was 10. And so we're expecting up to $20 billion worth of capital to be flooding into EdTech. So certainly money is there. What type of money? If you're an EdTech, you know, what do you look for in capital and so on? That's all those questions. What the point I wanted to make, I guess, is that actually tech spend in education is still only 4 to 5% of total spend. And so that's tiny. There's a long runway to go in terms of, use of and spend on technology in the education sector compared with many others. And in terms of EdTech investment, education is broad and it's deep. Everything from content to student experience and everything from pre-K to lifelong learning. But what we do see globally is lots of capital flowing into the workforce upskilling space. That whole sector is sort of reshaping, reforming, and we're going to see, I think, a lot more in that area. So that's just a little bit of a sort of context setting for the session. But I want to jump straight in, and perhaps let's start with Mark. You've raised money all along the way, and now, of course, you're a listed company. So maybe you could just start us off with the ReadyTech story and as it relates, of course, to capital.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Thanks so much for the introduction, Maria. And I think we have a very interesting story from a capital perspective. So, as Maria rightly said, we started some years ago now, and back in those days, there certainly wasn't as much or the same level or access to capital as there is today. So we bootstrapped our way without capital for a long time, and I always am very grateful for that period. I think that put into the DNA of the business this real inherent nature that we always try and make every dollar go a long way. So I'm very grateful for that period. But we started to look for a growth partner as we scaled, and the time we engaged an advisor. I think maybe we'll talk more about that today, just how important it is to engage the right types of advisor in these types of situations. And we got put in front of a whole bunch of different types of growth partners, VC, private equity, strategics. By that I mean other technology companies that operate in our space. And we ended up going down the private equity route, and there were a huge number of factors that went into that. So just some of the key ones were that I actually had a partner who was looking to exit the business, actually something that is not uncommon. But we were looking for growth capital. We actually wanted to really invest in our products to be able to go after the largest enterprises in our space, which is tertiary education, or higher education. That's TAFEs and universities. So we were really looking to fund those ambitions. But also we'd identified opportunities for acquisitions. And so private equity ended up being the right option for us, and we've had a really great relationship with Pemba Capital. Actually, I think Tom Matthews is on the next session from Pemba in the Shark Tank, so stick around for that. But look, we also had some debt. So at that time, we had a combination of equity capital from private equity. We also had some debt. We've never been overburdened with debt. It was modest debt. We really valued that capital. It's obviously to take on some debt is less dilutive for founders like myself. And then the last stage, we going public on the ASX and operating as a public company, certainly not without its challenges, but it really gave us a profile and a status, I think, to be able to go after these enterprise contracts. I think that's been very helpful. And then, of course, the access to capital to fund our ambitions. And I think each step of the way, as we've looked to understand the right type of capital, it's really been to fund that next stage of growth or up to that next horizon, and the access to capital on the ASX. It's very real. You have to earn the right, but there are vast pools of capital available when you're listed if you get access to the right high quality institutional investors. So there you are, Maria. A lot of decisions along the way, but always looking for the right capital at the right time for the right purpose, I think.
I think that's really, really great advice. If there's anyone in the audience who's thinking about raising money, that's fantastic advice, because it's sort of horses for courses, really. There's lots of different types of capital, and you want to choose the right one for your stage and so on. Jill, I'm going to turn it over to you now. You advise many different organisations, big and small and public and private, and when it comes to thinking about the sorts of decisions that Mark has made along the way and ReadyTech has made along the way, as an example of you're sometimes one of those trusted advisors that Mark was talking about, in terms of the advice you give in your job. So what's your perspective on those sorts of decisions and the importance of a partner, advisors, and so on?
Yeah, thanks, Maria. It's a really interesting question. Like, we get in to advise on, I guess, two main issues for all types of like startups in the EdTech space. One is being really clear on strategy and helping them know what their strategy is, and then what's the process to implement on that. And I know you can help with the various components along that. And when they're more ready, it's helping them find a partner. So find an investor, and whether that's finding someone to buy all the company or an investor on the way, or helping them go to an IPO. And so on both sides, you have to be really clear on what you want to achieve and why you're going about it. So as Mark mentioned earlier, when you're thinking about getting an investor, you have to be really clear on what you need. It's never just money. Like, are you looking for a partner to help connect and to invest, to obviously accelerate some areas? But do you need their network, or do you need some of their capability, access to new markets? Like, there's always some other areas you're going to need to want to enter that area where you dilute your capital and you start taking on other investors. So helping, I guess, startups and edtechs really be clear on their strategy for us is the key focal point at the start. And I think what's part of what makes giving good advice on the journey.
Yeah, I mean, that's an important point. I think it is more than money, even though it might not seem it at the time. It's definitely more than money. And if it's only the money that you're thinking about, then you're potentially missing opportunities for investor partners or partners to support you through other decisions that you may need to make, and access to network, access to overseas markets, all sorts of technology expertise, strategy expertise, and so on and so on. I think that's a great point. One of the things that we talked about earlier when we were thinking about this session was the different types of capital, because for many startups, it may seem that the purpose is to raise money. My next strategic objective is to raise, a Series B or a Series C or something. And of course, the purpose of the startup is not to actually just raise money. It's to build a business and make an impact, of course. But there are different types of capital. And Mark, you alluded to this as well. And so there's different types of capital and different types of outcomes for all sorts of, not just EdTech, but any sort of startups, but maybe education and maybe impact areas particularly. We've been thinking about how, the nirvana for every single startup is to become a unicorn and or to exit via a listing or something like that. But actually, it's sort of like an ecosystem. There's a lot of different players operating. Education's a system. And so any EdTech startup is going to be entering into that system. And some are small and niche and local, and that's great. And that works for the objective, the customers. And some are more scaled and perhaps sort of deeper in the tech stack or something and can be pushed more across. But there's all different types of startups, types in different sizes. There will always be. One of the things that we've been talking about is how those sort of interact together in that ecosystem or in that system. And I do think we're going to see more collaboration between ed tech companies, between their customers, between larger platform or ecosystem, open ecosystems maybe. And I know, Mark, you've been thinking about that as well. Do you want to just talk a little bit about that side of it?
Yeah, absolutely, Maria. It's a really interesting area. So we talk a lot about the EdTech ecosystem, and so to contextualize how we're thinking about that in the tertiary education space and in the higher education space. So, as a larger technology company, we have in terms of our customer landscape and customer set, we have over 1,400 private colleges that use our technology. But also when we looked at the larger education institutions, and we happen to operate more with TAFEs than universities. But similarly, these are large and complex customers. They are enterprise customers, and they really act as enterprise buyers. And so we provide a student record system. It's really the source of truth. It plays a very important operational role and compliance function, and it really acts as the backbone system. But there are a myriad of other ways that you can add value and innovate for these providers. And we're really not arrogant enough to think that we can solve all those problems or build for all those. So, we've thought a lot about how we as a larger player can nurture an ecosystem around us with some of these other EdTech players, support them with firstly a great integration, give them access, of course, to these customers, and help them in areas to ensure the right level of data governance and security, and help to penetrate these institutions. And likewise for the institutions who at times can find it difficult to actually procure from smaller technology companies, we give them, incredible innovation in a really frictionless way. So really trying to create a win-win in the ecosystem. So look, it's an idea for an ecosystem that we are very enthusiastic about. We're working with our first set of EdTech partners, and I think to Maria's point, there are many, many other similar opportunities or examples where EdTech companies can come together with their customers to really create massive value.
Yeah, absolutely. And Jill, on your side of it, the sort of working also with big institutions and government buyers and big tenders and things like that. I mean, no one wants to have 500 different vendors all doing a tiny little thing, especially in technology, especially now. From that side of things, can you relate your sort of views on what Mark's been talking about based on your experiences with these types of sort of buyers, I guess?
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I think the open ecosystem is a great idea. What I think about the work we do, particularly with the university sector, when they look at the student journey from student recruitment, learning design, the learning delivery, and that student experience, all the way through to sort of lifelong learning, they look at each bit of that, and there's almost an opportunity for an EdTech to play in every space along that. And they're increasingly looking at, okay, where are the priority areas within their strategic goals that they should be focusing on, and aligning that with their capabilities, and looking to bring in EdTechs into their ecosystem, particularly where they know that they can't build that capability either at all, or it's too slow to do that to get the response they need. And so as they start looking at bringing in different EdTech providers to address a gap, it's really slow to do that. So if they could bring in, I guess, almost an aggregator, to think of it in some ways, that brings together a few different services, I think it would help with that. And I really liked with your talk, Mark, when you talked specifically about the data governance and that cybersecurity, of being able to offer that, to bring that into the environment in a way that reduces the risk for those providers. Because I think, there's an opportunity to improve almost every aspect of the student journey through innovation at the moment. And it's been ripe for innovation for a long time, and I actually think that is starting to come through. And students are now expecting after this year to be able to switch back and forth through multimodal education. They're going to want the best of this as they continue to want to be working wherever they are and learning. And so I think the providers are going to have to accelerate, particularly to deliver on that student experience, faster than they'll be able to innovate in their own right. And the ecosystem is a great concept to be able to do that. One of the bits I sort of like to throw back is, how do you make that work for the lifelong learning with businesses? Obviously they all operate in their own environments. Of setting up that ecosystem for their lifelong learning will be transformational in terms of that constant upskilling as an option going forward.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, one of the things that because we're talking about investment, I'm wondering whether, this is an open question, I don't know the answer to this, but I'm wondering the extent to which investors play a role in helping or working with an ecosystem. It could actually be their portfolio to support this sort of collaboration or cooperation for greater impact or greater amplification of EdTech and better satisfied customers at a very large level. I mean, we in Australia, the B2B EdTech, BD EdTech is quite strong because the education institutions are relatively strong, and whether it be K-12 or higher ed, and there's a lot of digitisation compared with many other parts of the world. And so that's a great opportunity for sales, essentially, for B2B sales. Have we seen examples of investors or investment houses working with a stable of EdTechs and other platforms, I guess, to support and amplify that work? I'm reaching into my memory to try to pull one out. I can't think of one. There may be, but perhaps that's an opportunity as well in terms of the capital side, and something that an investor can bring an EdTech. That's sort of coming into the stable and supporting with a new way of thinking about channel to market, essentially. What are your thoughts on that, Mark? Is that something you think investors are, or capital can support?
Look, I think it's, I agree with you, Maria. It's an absolutely fabulous idea. I also haven't seen an example of that. And I certainly think that, if there's one thing that these investors are very good at, it's putting together not only investment, but strategy, and actually getting the right alignment there. And if that is about creating value, I can see absolutely how that could play. And I think we think about it similarly as well when it comes to the institutions. And here we're talking about the very large institutions that at this stage who often do find it difficult to buy and procure and adopt some of this ed technology. EdTech is that these institutions could also come together and support that network, and actually, rather than thinking of procuring EdTech as sort of traditional customer and vendor relationship, really create true partnerships with other institutions, and knowing that as they help and support those EdTech, then they get that innovation back, and just creating great win-win outcomes and supporting the EdTech community as well. So very similarly, I think these sorts of partnerships can work with the actual buyers.
Yeah. Jill, I wanted to circle back to you on the topic of big tech, i.e. tech giants, the Google, Amazon and so on, who are, extremely active in the education sector and different verticals. And in fact, some of them already attempting to build these sort of, whether they're open ecosystems or not, but ecosystems anyway. And, the extent to which big tech companies are starting to really make an impact into education, in the education sector, to be the platform that all schools are on, and doing big government deals and things like that. And then your thoughts on how they are potentially a source of capital. Potentially they are already, I mean, they're investing and so on, but potentially a source of capital, potentially a source of partnership, or potentially moving towards more less competition and more of a monopoly. I mean, all those things are sort of already in the world, but because you work with big governments and big organizations and institutions, I guess they're thinking about some of those things. It's not just the technology itself, but the environment in which, and the vendors and so on. Have you got any thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's been really interesting over the last year to watch, I guess, the role that the big platform players are playing in changing the ecosystem, but also in the way that big multinationals are re-engaging back into EdTech. Like, I take Pearson, for example, if they've tried to pivot some of their model to be, Pearson Plus and on that online space, to try and have an EdTech venture effectively on the side of online subscription for books. They're buying organizations, like they bought out Smart Sparrow to embed that into their operations. And so they're trying to create that dominance across some areas, but they still, they're an OPM provider in some, and so they provide some of that platform play as well. but they just don't have the nimbleness and the agile of the new EdTech startups, which is why the ecosystem play is quite different. And I guess coming back to where Mark was talking, I do wonder whether government's got a role in helping, support and fund that, to be an anchor client with some of that, to give security to some of that sector as an investor. They've launched the Breakthrough Victoria Fund in Victoria for new innovations, and it's a great space to play in if you can have the guarantee and the backing to grow in that space. But I guess it's an area that's going to continue to change when we look at those big players, and how do you take advantage of the security that the big players bring in some of that platform base, but then bring in the new innovations and some of that talent at different places where you can target niche capabilities to really deliver greater value, particularly to students in this space, and deliver greater learning outcomes. So that I think would be one of the big challenges as we drive forward with this.
Yeah, for sure. I want to pivot a little bit. We talked a little bit about, sort of the B2B space, so EdTech supporting institutions and schools and so on. I just want to pivot a little bit to the direct-to-consumer EdTech, and in particular at the post-secondary level, that this is not supporting traditional institutions to do their stuff better. It's actually to deliver directly to students. And we've seen that even with your Pearson example, slightly different, but they've now launched a student subscription model direct to consumer. So, I mean, even incumbent players are moving in this way, but a direct to consumer, especially in post-secondary, as in workforce upskilling, these are the sort of new models, and it could be a Coursera, or it could be a boot camp, or it could be whatever, those sorts of models, and the ways in which those not new, but potentially alternate models for adult upskilling, and the partnership that they bring with traditional ed tech, and also partnering with big institutions, as in big companies, for upskilling and supporting sort of workers in an ongoing way. I'm just wondering about, I mean, we do see in the world globally, the sort of capital that's flowing into adult upskilling is unprecedented. That is a lot of money flowing into that area, because generally capital likes to see millions of learners, and a B2C model is sort of directly to those learners. And so I'm just thinking about how incumbent institutions like universities and TAFE providers and so on are starting. They've got a whole new set of competitors, and those competitors have got a whole bunch of money. And Jill, I'm wondering about your thoughts on, where that might go, or whether you see that will become more of a collaborative environment or a competitive environment.
I'd love to see it become collaborative, but we'll wait to see how that plays out. I think the lifelong learning space is super interesting at the moment. So while a lot of the EdTech startups are growing in that space, the money in terms of where the investment is, like the direct-to-consumer model hasn't been as profitable as some as the B2B models traditionally. And when we look at businesses investing in lifelong learning, the programs compared to what people invest in education through the education institutions are much smaller in the investment there. And I know universities have struggled to make that a profitable market. And so it's finding a way to make that a good market, that you can make a course that's adaptive enough to cater for large workforce cohorts of reskilling and upskilling areas. And I guess one of the areas that particularly government's investing in significantly at the moment is that digital upskilling piece, as part of the digital skills for jobs in the future, which is it's kind of ironic to see that on an EdTech platform. But I think going forward, that is one of the areas where EdTech can be used to drive great social outcomes, and that's where large scales of investment across global governments are going into. And it'd be great to have that.
Yeah, I mean, that's the other thing, different types of capital, government funding is a massive funder of education generally, but these sort of schemes as well. I see a whole bunch of questions in the side, so I'm going to address some of those. People are interested in the open ecosystem, Mark. So one of the questions there from Gordon is how developing that EdTech ecosystem that's easy for education providers to procure. So maybe describing that, I guess you're talking about the sort of platform, and then that gives that security on all sorts of things in terms of data and so on, many other things as well. And then different EdTech solutions being on that, inside that ecosystem. And so can you talk a little bit more about your ideas or thoughts around how easy the process for EdTech education providers to procure, to become part of, or how would that work? I think that's the question from Gordon.
Yeah, good. So first thing I will say, it's very comforting to see so many questions this afternoon on a Friday, to know that it's so many people tuning in. So it's a really, really good start. Yeah, so I think first of all that the first part of this is for us is opening up our network to the EdTech providers. And may I say, if anyone has any interest in this at all, please reach out to me on LinkedIn, and very happy to have a further discussion. But so as we find the right types of technology that can complement our core backbone technology, just as Jill said, there's just so many opportunities through the entire journey of the student, right from very first student acquisition or interest all the way through to alumni. There's just so many touch points and so many areas that we can offer, a superior experience and a more digitized experience. And really the vision for the ecosystem is that we plug these in with a very frictionless integration. We really help with some of that thinking around this governance of data privacy and security, which is just so important to these customers. And then lastly, in terms of the enterprise customers themselves, is that we just want to make that as frictionless as possible. As we said, that we don't want to, an institution doesn't want to have hundreds of vendors, hundreds of invoices flying around. And so, very simply, if they can select to tag on an additional piece of technology that opens up and is connected in a really seamless way to their core technology, then that can just make a ton of sense. So, yeah, we're in the early stages. We're talking to our customers about this, and there is absolutely great appetite for it. So we're really excited to see where it goes.
I can imagine if you do it well, sorry, jump in, you get the whole bit where you have an online exam in some situation, you've got virtual proctoring and automatic marking that will feed back into the student management system as one seamless ecosystem that you could roll out as a product.
Absolutely.
You can imagine how that could work.
Yeah, absolutely. And as I said before, we just do not think that one company can do all of that or should do all of that. It's the beauty of startups and EdTech is the ability to move fast and innovate and take risks and move with pace and purpose. And so if we can open ourselves up to that, and of course, it plays back to the institutions themselves. It's very difficult for a big university or a TAFE to also develop that type of technology themselves. I don't think they should have to. That they should be. We're trying to help them ease that ability for them to access this innovation as easily as possible.
Yeah, I mean the concept of the ERP system has been, if anyone's ever used an ERP system, it's on its way out, because I think that's the thing. Solid architecture tried to do everything on everyone's workflow. It's very, very difficult, very slow, and all that. So the new sort of model is the ecosystem model, the platform model, and that allows for things to be pulled in and out as needs change. But it also allows for edtechs to do their thing, in their specialized way and be really, really good at it. And that can work very well for education, because there are many hundreds of sort of relatively unique little workflows inside education. They can be really quite sort of small, but very important to the learning process or to the education process. So those sorts of things do allow, and we do see some of that already happening in some of those tech players, like, for example, Zoom have even got their own education. It's not an app store, but they're education apps. And it's essentially, it's an ecosystem where, you know, edtechs that are doing a particular thing that can complement the platform, essentially. And so I do think that this is not only a really interesting possibility for the future, but also allows for a sort of a tapestry of different sizes of edtech, and also different types of edtech to thrive, because not every edtech is going to become a unicorn or a platform, but they're good at what they do. And, you know, and so I think that allows for that possibility as well. Okay, so believe it or not, we've only got 5 minutes left.
Wow.
And so I want to jump into the last question, which is sort of a, I think this is David's question at the end of pretty much every one of the panel sessions, which is great. And it's around the theme. It's backing up to the theme of amplifying, sort of amplifying education innovation. So Jill, let me start with you. The final question is, what do you think we should be amplifying in education? And where can capital or investors, where can capital better amplify education innovation? Anywhere, I guess.
It's a big question.
Yeah.
I guess there's, a lot of opportunity to amplify the impact of education, and knowing that the transformational impacts education can have. For me, this really has to come through sort of mainstream access through schools, universities, and using EdTech to overcome some of those access issues we currently have to education. And that really comes back to government as an investor, either directly or through schools, universities, to really drive that transformation of the way education is delivered in Australia to take it to that next level.
Yeah, great. And what about you, Mark? Where can capital amplify education the most? Where's the most need?
Well, I think that if you really think about that, we've been educated for thousands of years, but we've really only been operating in a digital way for 20 years. You know, we're very, very early in this. You know, if you think about the possibility, and so much stuff is happening, right? I've been on some sessions today, stackable skill sets, moving to a life of learning, and you know, the augmented reality. We're so early in many of these things, so. No, I think that offers enormous opportunity for investors and capital into the future. I think I would just really probably go back to the confirm the same point we've already been making, is that the really only way that we can make it all work is through really deep collaboration. And when I think about universities coming up against and competing against the likes of the big technology and in a lifelong learning, and very different cohorts to maybe that we're learning with them previously, they're going to need a whole bunch of new technology and a whole bunch of new innovation if they're going to compete. And the only real way to do that is to lean into the EdTech ecosystem. So that would really be my key message.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Guys, thank you so much. I popped in there to onto that last question, and it's been great to hear you talk about ecosystem so deeply, because we love that here at EduGrowth, right? That's what we all care about. It's about connection, collaboration, and accelerator. And you even touched on our big announcement yesterday at the Melbourne EdTech Summit, which I know you're all busy, so you may not have seen it, which was the exciting news about the partnership between Global Victoria and EduGrowth with the $800,000 project to help EdTech companies pilot their products in public institutions across the next year. So we're all on the same page. And Mark, you're on my list. I'll give you a call before the weekend's out, and we'll chat about how we can plug in some other programs. So it's been an absolutely amazing conversation, guys. Thank you so very much, and especially on a Friday afternoon, and a little birdie tells me, Maria, that it's some outrageous time in the morning for you, wherever you are. So incredible to hold that conversation together with such powerhouses.
I wouldn't miss it. Thank you so much, David.
Thanks very much,
everyone.
guys.
Thanks all.
It's been amazing. That sort of brings us towards the most exciting and fun piece of the Melbourne EdTech Summit. We're now starting to wrap up with a little bit of friendly competition. This is the second year that we have hosted the Melbourne EdTech Summit, and we've had a pitch competition. Over the last couple of days, we've narrowed down our finalists to 4. They've gone through a number of heats, they've met with various judges, they've met through various screenings, and they're going to now compete for a fantastic prize, which is a business strategy consultation for the experienced EdTech leaders, a marketing review with a leading marketing agency, some hosting credits from AWS, and also, the most importantly, the winner goes through to the semi-finals of the world's largest EdTech business plan competition, the Milk and Pen competition in the USA. We have a great panel of investors to be our sharks and judge this panel this afternoon. We've got Jonathan Warren, who is the founder and managing director of Greenwich Capital, an investment company partnering with great Australian private companies. Greenwich sees the EdTech sector as a strategic market that will be integral to their investment mandate going forward. He'll be joined by Tom Matthews, who is a partner at Pemba Capital, a leading Australian growth investor. Tom has been in the growth investment industry for more than 17 years, including partnering with companies that formed ReadyTech, a leading ASX-listed EdTech company, of which we've just had Mark, the CEO of that business. I think he actually mentioned it as well. And then finally, Rachel Newman from Flying Fox Ventures, who is previously the founder of Working Theory Angels. Rachel moved into full-time investment role after gaining her operating chops as managing director of Eventbrite for ANZ and helping to scale the company across the globe. She has worked with thousands of early-stage startups as head of startups for Amazon Web Services ANZ and a partner at StartMate, and in her 2 federal government appointments. Please welcome Jonathan, Tom, and Rachel. Hi guys, are you ready to did you work out in the green room who's going to be the nasty shark, who's going to be the fun shark, who's going to put their arm around them? We got that organised?
Yeah, that's also. Well, being Friday afternoon, I think we're all hugging each other.
Oh, we're all going to hug. All right, well, that's okay. That's a nice thing to have as well. So we're going to hear from 4 companies. What we're going to do is we're going to have someone's going to pitch to us. Then the next company's going to pitch us, and then we can get them back, and we'll ask them both some questions, and then we'll get the next 2 in, and then you'll go away and do your deliberations, and I'll interview actually the winner of last year's competition, Claire Orange. I'll interview her while you're doing your deliberations, and then we'll make the live announcement. So let's get going. We've got Ange Alcock, the founder of Social Media College. Ange, are you with us?
I am with you, but I am not the founder of Social Media College. I'm the founder of Flow.
Oh, I'm sorry. It's written poorly on my run sheet here. Sorry. Let me start again. We should pretend that I didn't say that. Let's go rewind again. Ange Alcock, the founder of Flow.
How are you going? Thanks for having me.
Thank you very much.
Am I right to start?
You are. Off you go.
Okay. I'm a secondary school English teacher, and I know firsthand the impact our current workload is having on teachers' mental health. For me, the ineffectiveness of current systems for setting and marking assessments is the most frustrating part. And our research has confirmed that this is true for most teachers. Marking assessments after hours and on weekends is totally demotivating. And having to repeat the same comment over and over again is so frustratingly time-consuming. Hi, my name is Ange Alcock, and I'm the founder of Flow, a new marking system created by teachers for teachers. Not only does Flow massively reduce marking time, Flow also helps teachers and schools deliver better educational outcomes for their students. We decided to tackle one major issue: excessive teacher workload. 76% of teachers say their workload isn't manageable anymore. 76%. Teachers are faced with a dilemma. They either have to sacrifice their own well-being, or they sacrifice the time they spend giving feedback to individual students. One of the primary reasons for this workload is the amount of non-negotiable tasks that are incredibly time-consuming and repetitive, like marking. I know that having a huge pile of essays to mark creates a feeling of dread for many teachers. Marking essays is really repetitive, and it's completely mind-numbing. Teachers find themselves adding the same comment over and over and over again. And then Students often don't engage with that feedback, making teachers feel like they've spent all this time giving feedback and it's just wasted. So how is Flow helping to solve this problem? Flow has been proven to reduce essay marking time by 40%. Flow specifically targets the nitty-gritty of assessment marking, particularly essays, to reduce teacher workload. By reducing clicks wherever possible, Flow allows teachers to work faster and launch straight into their tasks. No fluffing around. Teachers can drag and drop annotations straight from their bank onto student work with just one click. Auto-tally developmental rubrics and criteria sheets that are time-saving and accurate. No more time spent individually scanning student work. Our bulk upload feature lets teachers upload an entire class set of work as one PDF, and Flow splits it for them automatically. And our student learning goal loop ensures that students actually engage with teacher feedback. It's completely automated, so teachers don't need to organize and keep notes on student goals. Flow was released just a few months ago, and we already have more than 100 teachers using Flow and 3 schools in the process of onboarding. They'll become paid subscribers. All of this has been completely organic with limited marketing or sales team. And these schools have approached us because their teachers have promoted Flow to them. In fact, our competitor analysis has confirmed that no other online tool provides the complete marking solution that Flow does. Flow is the best online marking solution. Flow helps reduce teacher workload. Currently, we're achieving a 40% reduction in marking time. Flow creates happier teachers and a more productive educational environment. Flow improves educational outcomes with meaningful learning progress for students. And when a school includes Flow in its set of educational tools, teachers become better teachers, students become better learners, and schools can become leading educational institutions. We are looking for the right investor that will be a great fit. If you've got a passion for the education sector like we do, please contact me to discuss how we might work together to change the lives of teachers for the better. Thank you.
Very much, and that was a fantastic, great thing. We'll see you in just a second as we will get the judges to ask you a few questions in a moment. We're now going to hear from Gordon Scott, the founder of Successful Graduate. Hi, Gordon, how are you?
Great, thanks, David. How are you?
Good, and we've got your slides, so you're ready to go whenever you are.
Excellent. Thanks, mate. All righty. Well, look, ladies and gentlemen, there are edtechs that handle niches in the sector, and what I want to talk today is, in fact, about the largest challenge in higher ed, vocational education, and, of course, high school in preparation, and that is the challenge of employability. Successful Graduate deals with what I think is the largest challenge in the industry to improve the employability of students, of ed providers across the sector. That was the first point I made on Wednesday. The second is that EdTech is now far more acceptable to the pandemic, and so we've seen a huge upswing in client engagement with us. The third point I made was that students expect their education provider now to offer employability support and employability job readiness training to them, and they're prepared to accept it online. So the 3 points that I want to make today is to delve into how our solution is customized and branded for each of our customers. Secondly, I want to talk to you about our traction in the industry, particularly in the last 3 years. And thirdly, to talk about how I think we're probably getting close to being investor ready with the help of growth and others. Solution, this is a branded online customized employability training solution, which is being rolled out at scale by some very large customers, including the Australian government. 2 weeks ago, we launched the Study Australia Work Readiness Micro-Credential for international students. We've had now 115,000 students with our training from all over the planet. Now, kind of is the sort of scale that we deliver to education provider customers such as universities and TAFEs in Australia and indeed overseas. So it brings me to our second point. With our scale and our geographic diversity, we're interested in looking for how we can improve our traction into other markets and indeed grow our base by finding the right partner. And I was really interested in the last session where Mark Washbourne and Jill Cashin spoke about finding the right capital at the right time for the right purpose. Folks, we're profitable. We have zero debt. We are only running the strength of our own capital at the moment. I'm not necessarily looking for a venture capitalist. I'm looking for somebody who is able to help us to be ready into offshore markets. Do you have the right channels to market? Do you have a customer base that is needing a solution impact like ours? If so, then I'm all ears, and I'm also right on 3 minutes. So I'm happy to take questions. Thank you.
Hi, Gordon, I'm back. Sorry, we just had a little technical challenge there. So we're going to ask Ange to come back and join us. We're also going to ask the judges to come and join us as well. So we'll have Tom, Jonathan, and Rachel joining us. And we've got a few moments for some questions. So does any one of the judges want to jump in first? Oh, wow, we've got some interesting screens going on here. We've got some challenge on the internet at the moment by the looks of it. I can see you, Jonathan. We're still waiting to see. Oh, here we go. Rachel's arrived. All right. Did you have a question that you wanted to kick off with, Jonathan?
Yeah.
Either Ange or to Gordon?
Yeah, sure. I might start with Ange first. And my question is, look, congratulations getting the product to where you've got it already, and the time you've done it. What are the next areas for improvement out of interest? What's on your roadmap
to improve the product? So we have a pretty exhaustive roadmap of what our next, sets of development are going to be. At this point in time, we have a fully functioning platform. It's actually a really big platform. And so we are just looking to continue building our user base and just, polishing up some of the features that are already there. And then when we can secure some investment funding, we'll do another big round of development and also just trying to scale as well.
Thank you.
And I'll just pick up where you left off there. You talked about growing your user base. So tell me about your go-to-market strategy. It's been great that you've managed to get 100 teachers organically, and it looks like 3 inbound leads from schools. But as you look to scale this, what's your sales or marketing strategy?
So we feel that teachers are really key drivers, and this is something I know because I am a teacher as well. Teachers are the drivers and they're the people that need to use this product. So the primary people that we need to get on board and loving Flow are teachers, and we feel that the schools will follow, which is what it's shown so far. I mean, we've only launched a couple of months ago and we've already had 3 schools contact us and asking how do we pay, which is not something that we actually anticipated. We kind of set out this time just to, get the teachers loving the platform and everything. It's kind of, it was a bit of a surprise there that they came at us just asking about subscription. But basically, we have just brought on board a growth marketing person to our team, and we are just starting to start our marketing journey at the moment. We are really early stage, like we only have just launched. So I guess that's kind of our plan at this point, but we've been having really good success with actually just contacting heads of English and schools directly and getting a lot of great feedback and getting them, they've all been sharing it with their teams and things like that. So it's kind of spreading quite organically through schools just by people hearing about the product.
And Angie,
fantastic.
Quick question from me, if I may. You mentioned you threw some very interesting and relevant sort of statistics in terms of a 40% reduction in marking time, which sounds fantastic. And I think you made mention of students becoming better learners. Have you been able to pull any data together to actually support that last piece? So
that is supported through the learning goal loop that we've automated through the system. So it is proven that if students can set get, I guess, habits in place to set goals and learn how to set those goals and to review them and to apply them in their, like the future assessments and I guess whatever they're doing, that creates better learners because they engage with their feedback. So we've actually created inside our system, inside Flow, an automated system that ensures that like students have to do that. So they don't get their grade and they can't just like get their grade back and then, the essay goes to the bottom of the school bag and they never read all that feedback that teachers have given them. They get their essay back. It has all the comments and the annotations and they have to read it all, type into a little box and submit what they want their learning goal to be. It comes back to the teacher and the teacher goes, yep, that's a great learning goal, or no, it's not quite there, try again. And so that, and from the teachers that we've had trial our products so far, they have said that has been really amazing, and they can see that those goals turning up on the next assignment, which students also have to go when they get to essay 2, they have to go tick a box and say, did I actually do this goal or did I just write it last time and then forget about it completely? Like, we kind of really hold them accountable. And what we plan to do is obviously improve on that feature and add more parts to it. But at this stage, it's building those habits for students so that they can continually improve and engage with the feedback that they're getting.
We might ask, see if Gordon, were there any questions for Gordon and Successful Graduate? Did you want to jump in, either Jonathan or Rachel? Did you have something?
I'll just ask, Gordon, you're obviously tackling a very big problem. You identified as kind of the largest challenge in higher ed, which is employability. And lots of people are trying to play at this space because it's such a big opportunity. So what do you think is going to be the big cut through that Successful Graduate will have amongst all the other competitors? What is the kind of secret sauce that you think that will make Successful Graduate the right proposition?
Thanks for the question. It's scale. It's the ability to be able to impact a large number of students at an education provider. So, the contracts that we signed aren't just for small cohorts, they're for the entire cohort of an institution. Thus, an institution is able to say, come and study with us. You can learn your technical and hard skills in relation to the qualification you'll get, but we'll also teach you how to use those skills and your other innate skills to apply for work and to get work once you graduate or even while you're studying. So we've developed now a series of programs that span the student life cycle. And I suppose our pivot this year has been to support, in particular, the international education sector here in Australia, because we're in lockdown and there are no international students coming into the country. But when that does happen, we need to be ready to go. And so that's why we're so delighted to have the contract with the federal government, which I guess exemplifies how we're able to handle a large scale. And now we have contracts in place with education providers that are using our products as an incentive for a student to enroll with them. And so if you can imagine, we have a pre-departure course for international students. So a customer will say, right, well, you're in our marketing pipeline. We now are going to offer you free access to some online training on an installation with our brand that provides ongoing brand engagement for the customer. The student completes that micro-credential and then might actually make an application to study, at which point they can move on to the next course. And so we're supporting part-time work application, internship preparation, and graduate preparation, different courses for different elements of the student life cycle. So to answer your question, it's about scale.
Tom or Jonathan, did you want to jump into the question for Gordon?
Yeah, probably. Thanks, David. My question is, how long do you actually retain the student for? Is it once they are employed, or does it even go beyond that to their next job after, or multiple jobs?
So we've actually developed another company. I think you can see behind me, Job Readiness Training, which is about supporting people who've actually now entered the workforce and are looking to develop a career plan. So for us, that's an extension of the student life cycle. We're really talking about alumni. By default, we offer access for students to our products for 1 year, but we can turn that off and make it for as long as really the license agreement with the customer is for. And it's horses for courses. Do we want to be able to support students into their careers? Absolutely. And so for us, the next stage is the development of a series of soft skills micro-credentials and career development and career extension micro-credentials.
I had a
And
similar
Tom?
question, Gordon. Yeah, sorry, I had a similar question. So I had to look at your website just to try and better understand the revenue model. And my understanding is it's sort of a $199 charge for 12 months. Just keen to understand what sort of percentage is sort of one-off versus repeat purchases by your customers?
So the website that you looked at would have been successfulgraduate.com, which is our B2C website. We actually develop a unique website for every customer. So the far greater majority of our business is B2B, where we enter into an enterprise license agreement with an education provider and develop an installation that's branded as theirs. So I'd have to say, let's say 15 to 20,000 international and domestic students have come through B2C, and in excess of 150,000 have coming through on a B2B basis. And that's where we're growing. That's our intention for moving forward.
That makes sense. And then what's the revenue model with the B2B? It's a sort of license fee type model?
Well, again, it's scalable, but what an opportunity. So this year we have a special where we're actually offering unlimited student access for an institution for $50,000 for 3 courses, $75,000 for 5 courses. And so that really represents a massive drop in, the $199 per student, but we couldn't possibly expect to charge that much on an enterprise license basis. Now, we know $50,000 is right underneath the procurement limit for most universities in Australia, which enables quite easy procurement for our product into their system.
Guys, thank you so very much. Ange and Gordon, good luck. It's been great watching your pictures and then answering the questions from our guys. Rachel, Tom, and Jonathan will be back in. I know you've got another question, but we will be here till midnight. We can ask that in the green room. So Ange and Gordon, we'll see you in the green room. Jonathan, Tom, Rachel, we'll have you back here in a second. And now we're going to move into our second block. We've got Pablo Fares from Zenva, the founder of Zenva. How are you, Pablo? Are you with us?
Thanks. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good. Do you want to share your screen? We've got your screen as well. The floor is yours. See you in 3 minutes.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for coming today. I'm Pablo, the founder of Zenva. The Atacama Desert in Chile is the driest place in the world, and I happened to grow up there in a mining town. Back in the 90s, as a teenager, I got my hands on a programming book, and that's how I got started in that career path. However, I didn't get very far. I got stuck. A friend and I called every training center in the city, but none of them offered any courses that we could enroll into. Giving people access to high-quality learning opportunities, regardless of where they live, is one of the reasons why I started Zenva, an online academy that teaches coding, game development, and immersive technologies. Our courses are self-paced and consist in video lessons, interactive coding exercises that run in the browser, micro-credentials, as well as real-world projects. Until this point, we raised 400,000 AUD through 14 consecutive Kickstarter campaigns that allowed us to build our platform, build our content, get everything up and running. This year, we reached 1 million enrollments, and our subscription annual recurring revenue, which we launched in the end of 2019, is growing at a healthy rate. As a company, we've collaborated with leading organizations, which is something that has helped us reach more learners. Now, how are we going to get to the next 5, 10, 50, or 100 million users? In the vertical of lifelong learners, that's what we're already in. We're going to keep doubling down on that and growing in that space, but we need to expand further. So one of those areas is schools, which I'm going to talk about next. We also want to be part of the efforts that governments are going to be making to train the workforce at scale in new skills. And next year, we're also going to look into the homeschooling vertical once we have something up and running for schools. So from starting around the time the COVID hit, we started getting a lot of messages from teachers about using our product, which prompted us to research a space, talk to a lot of teachers. And what we learned was that for kids and young teenagers, it's a pretty mature market. There's lots of good solutions. You might have seen some of them in this conference. But for older teenagers, when it comes to these coding, digital skills, we saw an opportunity. At the moment, it's very time consuming for teachers. And sadly, many schools don't even have the capabilities to teach it. At the same time, our content, it can be mapped to the curriculum and it's in line with what's needed. So we're working now on an MVP, running a few, about to start pilots with schools. That is in the works already. So it's going to be basically a copy of our website, but hosted in Australia with a few changes. We are working with a senior technology teacher to map our curriculum, our content to the curriculum. And there's going to be some additional teacher tools that will allow teachers to save time while supercharging really the way that they can deliver this content. If you'd like to get involved, we're definitely looking for pilot schools and teacher feedback as much as we can. So if you're interested in a free trial, in checking it out either for your own professional development or for your classroom, please reach out. And we're also looking for partnerships, resellers. We're not particularly looking for investment. If we did, the money would be a bonus as we are profitable, can use that to fuel our growth. We're more.
Thanks very much, Pablo.
Thanks.
We're now on time. You'll have some time in the questions to catch up. So thanks very much. Great pitch. Okay, now we move to our final pitch for this afternoon, and it's going to be Dave Phillip from IntelliSchool. How are you, Dave?
Good, thanks. Thanks, David.
We can see you. We've got your slides. Over to you.
Let's go. I'm going to take you on a bit of a journey. So I'm Dave. I'm one of the co-founders of IntelliSchool. I've been working in the EdTech industry for a bit over a decade. And during that time, I met Mary. Mary's a fantastic teacher, like most of the teachers that I've worked with. But when one of her students, Billy, his grades started to rapidly decline and his demeanor changed, Mary wanted to understand why. So she began to dig through all of the information that she had on Billy. And it turns out the signs were there that he was struggling, but they were buried in so many disparate places, it's no wonder they weren't obvious. Mary was concerned about the amount of time that it takes to bring together all of this disparate information and draw meaningful and relevant insights that could help Billy, but she also didn't want to disadvantage the other students in her class by using up all of her valuable time. There is a better way. By drawing on relevant data from anywhere, amalgamating that with automation and artificial intelligence, and overlaying that with powerful insights and early warning algorithms, we can create better outcomes for all students. Our purpose is to impact learning for all students globally. And we do this in 3 key areas, being student and staff well-being, the learning environment, and the business of operating a school. My co-founder Josh and I know this market. As I mentioned before, I have over a decade experience in EdTech and consulting to schools around Australia. And Josh brings the same amount of experience, but in data engineering, data integration, and business intelligence for some of Australia's best known brands like ANZ, Coles, and Flybuys. We officially launched in the last 8 weeks of 2020. In that time, we went from $0 to $100,000 in annual recurring revenue in just under 8 weeks. Through 2021, we've continued to grow, bringing on schools from across the country. I think that speaks to the impact that we're making in the classroom. And on our current trajectory, we're due to hit $1.5 million in annual recurring revenue by December this year. What's even more exciting is that we're already international. We've got a foothold in South America, and we're also servicing schools in Malaysia. We're also bringing on some partner schools in New Zealand just this week. We're helping students and teachers all over Australia, and we're starting to help students and teachers all over the world. If you'd like to find out more about our products, head to intellischool.co. Thanks for your time. Looking forward to your questions.
Thanks very much, Dave. Fantastic presentation and pitch. We're going to ask Pablo to join us, and our judges, Jonathan, Tom, and Rachel will join us again as well, and we'll get some questions to you. So I'll open the floor to our judges. Who wants to jump? I think I cut you off before, Rachel. So it's only right that I come back to you with the first question this time, right? Because I was being. So it turns out that I'm going to be the mean cop today. All right. So I'm the timekeeper.
That's all right.
After you go, Rachel.
As a good investor, I was just going to ask Ange about how much money she's raising, but I'll find that offline.
I am sure you will.
Word of warning: anyone here who's raising money, tell investors that you're raising money and tell them how much. My question is going to go to IntelliSchool, to Dave. First of all, congratulations on that early traction and you're accessing customers around the world. I'm going to actually boringly repeat a question I asked an earlier company, which is, tell me about your go-to-market strategy. Tell me about sales. So how is it that you've unlocked these international opportunities, and what is your growth plan?
Our business model is fairly unique. So, or at least in the EdTech scene, from what I've come across. We don't sell directly to schools. We sell to other EdTech providers, and we work with them to embed our product inside theirs. And straight away, that gives us access to just about their entire customer base with very, very little friction. And the reason that it's having so much success there is because it's in the places that teachers and students use every day. They don't have to log into another tool. They don't have to learn how to use something new. It's in a familiar place, and they get it from day one.
So just a question, Dave, on that. So how does that actually work then? So they why do the EdTech providers that you sell to, why do they buy from you?
We're bringing in a capability that a lot of them don't have natively. So in the EdTech world, I mean, a lot of people have tried to fix this problem before, and we're going about it a different way. So schools have stacks of silos of data, all of these different applications that very, very rarely talk to each other. And we're offering the EdTech providers an opportunity to pull all of that data into their interface, and straight away, it gives them a bit more gravitas within a school, because it's the place where teachers and students go to find out everything. And they've also got access to data that they didn't have before through our APIs. So I hope that answers the question.
Sorry, Jonathan. I was just going to ask quickly, how many EdTech providers do you currently work with?
We have 2 formal partnerships that we have announced. We have quite a number that we are announcing over the next few months, because we're trying to pace ourselves, to be honest. But we've got enough in the pipeline to keep us going for at least another couple of years.
Over to you, Jonathan.
Yeah, Dave, thanks for the presentation. When you're measuring the benefits, because you're a B2B to student or C model, how are you measuring those benefits? Is it?
That's an interesting one, because it's different at every school. So some schools are, rather than using our tools to measure impact in classroom or measure the impact of our tools specifically, they're using it as an impetus to help drive data culture and help and encourage teachers to provide more information into the systems that they're using, because they can see what comes out of the other end. For those schools that are more data ready, I suppose, they're often using our tools to look at or prove that a student is growing. So I heard someone else earlier this week mention a year's learning is a year's growth, proving that that is actually happening and the student is on the right trajectory. And that in itself is something that many schools haven't been able to do before. And straight away, it kind of proves the worthiness of our product in their eyes.
I'm conscious that we're starting to run out of some time, and I wanted to get some questions into Pablo from Zenva. Did Rachel, Tom, or Jonathan, did you want to ask Pablo something?
Yeah, I'd love to. Pablo, we've actually at Pemba looked quite extensively at this niche and agree with your conclusions around, it's relatively crowded at the younger student end. Yeah. What would you say differentiates your business over some of the other providers in the market, given there are relatively limited barriers to entry?
I think it's we already have a pretty good catalog that has been battle tested with thousands of students. We have internal processes to analyze and improve those courses on a regular basis. Some of the main providers that are out there are marketplaces, and those are the ones you might be referring to. They all have the same problem. It has to do with human cognition. People buy courses that have the maximum number of hours, but actually as a learner, you want to learn something quick. So if you go to most of our competitors, they will feature, like, people go and buy these best-selling courses that have 50 hours, and we're able to teach that in 5 hours. The other thing that we do differently is that we cater to all learning styles. Usually platforms are either video-based or they're written content, whatnot. We make all of the different learning styles available for every lesson on our platform.
Pablo, I have a question about scaling. Considering that you are creating the content, how are you going to scale from a content perspective and continue to get more courses in there?
Yeah, so our team already creates like a few courses each month, and what we need for the school part is to incorporate team members that are actually technology teachers who have that education piece, that curriculum piece. So we are going to start focusing just on the digital solutions curriculum in Queensland, because it's a good local MVP where we can be very involved and kind of iterate quickly. But then we can easily just from there make modifications for other standards. And this is an area that's not really standardized, that technology in higher years. So we kind of pretty much need like a few different curriculum-based ones, and then a general one that could be used in even most of Australian states don't even have anything for those years.
Pablo, thanks for that, and thanks for the presentation. Have you had a third party accredited your course?
No, so our courses belong to kind of the realm of non-accredited. Our customers are lifelong learners, developers, hobbyists, so they are definitely not academic in that regard. They're project-based. Our instructors have industry certifications, and they are in that public scrutiny where if we don't make a good course, you'll read about it on Trustpilot. So that is kind of our accreditation. It's just the sheer amount of people that are constantly watching those courses.
Thank you.
Fantastic. I think we've got some fantastic questions to both of those. So I think that brings us to the end of our pitching and our questions, and we're going to say goodbye to everyone and send you back to do some deliberation over in the green room. That link is in the private chat for you if you need to find it again, to our judges. And whilst the judges are doing their deliberation, we are going to have a really exciting couple of minute conversation, because I know that we are pressed up hard against time, and we've got Claire Orange, who is the founder and CEO of Digi Online, who actually won the Melbourne EdTech Summit 2020 pitch competition. We get to hear how things are going. Welcome, Claire. How are you?
Thanks for having me back, David. Yes, I'm good.
Now, I am being told in this other ear that we have you for a few minutes. You have a hard finish, right? I do.
So that's all right. That's all right.
Tell me a little bit about what's been happening with you for the last year.
Right. So this time last year, David, when I was coming up to pitch in this wonderful forum that you've created, Digi Social was in our research trials. So Digi Social is a world-first cyber education platform for Year 5 and 6 students. So it's a live and immersive social media-like experience for children. And then we feed back on every keystroke to the child about the choices in their content, posting picture and word, and then siphoning all sorts of other education. So we were putting that to trial. We were into an independent research trial. So that took us through most of last year. 2,000 children were involved in that trial. And we've come out the other end as an evidence-based platform, and now we're out and commercially available in schools.
Well, I have to ask you the obvious question. What did you think up front, and did any of it change at the back end of your 2,000 student trial?
You know what? Surprisingly little. We kind of went in with that concept. We built to concept. We came out, we figured out how clever kids are with technology, far, far cleverer than us, David. They gamified all aspects of the playground, the platform, which was impressive and sometimes amusing, other times hair-pulling. So we had to fix up those little bits. But yeah, just watching that usage was phenomenal.
Fantastic. And I know that you because of COVID and all of the things that were happening in your life, you couldn't participate in the Milk and Pen business plan competition. But did you focus on building the business in another way last year?
Yes, so I ended up going through a business accelerator program last year, David, which you know.
Give them a plug. Who did you do your accelerator with?
Through Plus8. So
Okay.
Plus8 is a fantastic business accelerator. So went through that. We went through a capital raise in the December-January period, and we closed our raise. We were oversubscribed, and then we've used all of that funding, of course, as our runway to continue our build and get into schools. So you know, we've really just gone from there. We've been very fortunate to access the Access Asia funding, which is helping as our springboard into the Asian market too.
Fantastic. And what's the next big step for you? What's the next thing that happens? When we come and speak to you again in a year's time or 3 years' time or 5 years' time, what are we going to expect to hear from Digi?
Well, really, it's about that geographic growth now. So, you know, we're working hard to convert schools in the Australian market. We have a school in China, we have a school in the UK, and really that's where the attention will go after this year of bedding it down in Australia, is to really learn about those markets and to go hard and fast outside the Australian market.
Fantastic, Claire. Now, I understand people are telling me in this ear that you need to go and speak to some news service, or you need to go on TV, you need to go to speak to someone. So thank you so very much for coming back and sharing with us. What we'll do is we'll invite all of our founders who pitch. So thanks very much, Claire. We really appreciate meeting you and seeing you again and hearing from you again.
Wonderful. David, can I just add that this is a fantastic forum for all EdTech startups to be seen and to do the learning that needs to happen. So it's a wonderful forum, and congratulations for providing this for all startups in Australia.
Fantastic. Thanks very much, Claire. You go and do your interview. Hopefully you get $1 million contract from it. Off you go.
Bye.
And whilst with we might just put everyone up on screen, actually, control room. We might have a conversation. Why don't we ask some of those questions that we know, that seeing that the judges can't hear us, so we can share amongst ourselves as some founders, because none of this will impact what they're doing their deliberations on. So I might come with you, Dave. I'll begin by asking you a question. You mentioned when the judges were speaking to you that there's a capability that you're bringing to EdTech companies that they don't have. Can you share that with us? What do you think is that big capability?
I think it's, for a lot, it's about really, it's that surfacing data component that I sort of touched on. It's being able to bring in, like an example might be standardized testing information. So ACER, PAT test results and NAPLAN results, or whatever else it might be, and surface them within their application, which they haven't been able to do before. But then they can extend on that and start looking at bringing in data from smart curriculum tools or any other number of data sources that a school has, and really make their application that place that everyone goes to find out stuff, which is what you want to be in the school.
So are you putting your data dashboards back into their platform, or are you putting it into an aggregated centralized hub?
No, it goes, our dashboards appear inside their platforms, so they're embedded.
Cool. Awesome.
Yeah.
And I'll come back to you. Seeing that I got the name of your company wrong right up front, you did incredibly well. For those of you who weren't here, I named Ange. I made her the founder of a completely different company she'd never heard of before. She had to pitch that for a couple of minutes until she told me that I got it wrong. Tell me a little bit about Flow. I had a question for you around Flow. Can I take any worksheet that I'm currently using in my classroom, or do I have to use worksheets from in your platform?
So it's not worksheets. It's designed so that teachers can mark their handwritten assessments online and use all of the like, I guess we've customized all of the editing tools and the annotations and everything like that. So instead of just being able to mark typed assessments online, like as an English teacher, and any English teachers who are in the audience will know that you get often you'll get kind of a 50-50 split. Some of them will be typed document format, and then other ones, if you seniors, will be year 11 and 12 will always usually be handwritten. So you might have a great system for marking online, but then when you get your senior work, you have to go back to the dark ages and start marking by hand again. So you can upload all of your work straight up and use all of our amazing editing and annotating tools and all of our integrated rubrics that auto tally and everything else with your hand marked stuff. So we're trying to make sure that teachers can actually reduce their marking time and do that for the ways that they actually get given the work. So we feel like there are lots of great platforms out there that help you to keep grades and to set assignments, but everyone just glosses over the big thing in the middle, which is actually having to mark them is what takes all the time. So we've built a product to specifically address that and all the nitty-gritty things that teachers actually need to do to mark those assessments.
Fantastic. And Dave, Pablo, Gordon, good luck. I'm hearing people scream in this ear, which is why I muted myself to say, could you please be quiet politely? Because I could not hear you whilst I could hear them. So the judges are back here with us. So good luck. We're about to hear the results. I'm actually about to hear it as live with you. I'm not as nervous as you are, but I'm nervous as well. So Jonathan, Tom, and Rachel, thank you so very much for coming back. I think one of you have been nominated as the announcer. Who is announcing that?
I think
you,
first,
Rachel?
I think first we have lots of nice things to say about all the companies that presented. So I'm just going to first kick off and talk to Pablo at Zenva. So one of the things that we talked about in the green room that we loved about your business is that total addressable market. There is a huge opportunity, and you really pointed out that there's a disconnect between the size of the opportunity and the fact that so many schools don't have the capacity or the skills and the expertise to be able to teach this course content. So, when we look at the market opportunity for Zenvo, we got extremely excited. Now I'll pass it to Tom.
So I'll cover successful graduate. So Gordon, thank you very much for your presentation. What I really like about your organisation, similar point that Mark Washburn made in the session previously, is that you're one of few sort of EdTech businesses that's profitable, and you've bootstrapped your growth historically. So very well done on achieving that.
Thanks, Tom.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
And then I'm just going to cover IntelliSchool. Dave, congratulations. Really enjoyed the presentation. Particularly what I was, very impressed was how quickly you've got traction. Particularly, because it is a B2B to C model. How quickly you've even got traction with the other education providers out there and embedding yourself there. And I was seriously impressed by that, because that rapid traction is very difficult in that type of market.
Thank you.
And so that actually brings me to Flow. And before I tell Ange the things that we loved about Flow, I do want to congratulate her, because she is the winner of the pitch contest. So congratulations, Ange at Flow.
Thank you.
One of the things that I particularly love about the product is the natural flywheel that you have built in, with teachers using the product individually, them telling their friends, obviously then telling the school, and seeing the opportunity for enterprise, as well as then the school signs up, their teachers become users. And I think that there's going to be a very beautiful and organic flywheel if and when you're creating this amount of value for them. And so I can just see the opportunity for you to grow very organically that way. Tom?
Yeah, so a couple of things from my side. I really like the the outcomes that your business is able to achieve. So the reductions in marking time, and I really like the way that you can very clearly articulate the problem that you solve. So well done.
Thank you.
And Ange, from my side, it really probably extenuates from the flywheel effect is actually the scalability. I mean, I think you've really you're onto something substantial here, which can really transcend right across all borders and pretty rapidly. So congratulations. I thought it was outstanding. Well done.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
So firstly, congratulations to you, Ange, for winning the pitch competition, and Jeanette and my team will be in contact with you with all the details. To all of the others, to Gordon, Pablo, and Dave, fantastic to get to this point. It's not easy to get through a pitch competition, especially a virtual pitch competition like this as well. And finally, a thank you to Jonathan, Tom, and Rachel for providing the judging for today. It's been an exciting way to end the Melbourne EdTech Summit there. So thank you all very much.
Thank you for organizing.
Thanks, David. And congratulations to you and your team for hosting what must have been a mammoth amount of work. I congratulated your team backstage, but well done. It's been a great week.
Thank you very much. That sort of brings us towards the end of the Melbourne EdTech Summit, and it's been an incredible 4 days. I have an amazing job where I get to lead a team of awesome people supporting a truly engaged ecosystem focused on reimagining education in the digital world. And that ecosystem supports us to facilitate a summit like this. We started with a very simple concept. Let's take an innovation lens and digital focus on the big trends happening here and around the world in education. We are convinced, as I am sure you are, that the future of education will be driven by EdTech entrepreneurs engaging directly. I've just lost my point, sorry. We are convinced, as I'm sure you are, that the future of education will be driven by EdTech entrepreneurs engaging directly with innovative educators, defining what is possible and what is achievable. Thank you all for leading this movement. The Melbourne EdTech Summit is a collaboration. We need the participants, the speakers, and the partners to bring it all together. I unreservedly thank our partners, Global Victoria, WAND, Amazon Web Services, Curio, and Open Learning. You all made a huge contribution to defining the narrative and truly partnering with us. Whilst I get to lead EduGrowth, it's actually the team on the ground that keep delivering and bringing my and the board's vision to life. The summit would not be possible without the incredible commitment of each other and the entire ecosystem. Thank you, Sarah Lamont, for the unbelievable work in coordinating such a big project. Jeanette Tran, for your constant focus on the member voice in this program. And finally, to Sophia Harlan and Ruth Jackman, that make it look so good whilst gathering an engaged audience. And my final thanks is to you, the participants. Thanks for every single delegate who's dropped in over the last 4 days. I had a very brief look at the numbers, and it will be 5,000 or 6,000 people by the end of the program who have dropped in. We look forward to seeing you at one of our upcoming programs and at the Melbourne EdTech Summit in 2022. Thank you so very much.